Hey everybody, welcome to the Cosmic Panel. Today we're going to be interviewing acclaimed author and cartoonist Kyle Starks, writer of comics such as I Hate This Place, Rock Candy Mountain, Sex Castle, Where Monsters Lie, Peacemaker Tries Hard, and many, many more. Thank you so much for being here, Kyle. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me. We just like to talk comics and whatnot.
Yeah. So, first up, could you do us a favor and tell us a little bit about the media you consumed as a kid? Anything that really stood out to you that you still remember fondly?
Oh my gosh. Um, what a trick just to pop that out on me first thing. Um, I mean, I'm a big consumer of media. I'm 47, so I'm old. Lots of Saturday cartoons, right? Um, things that I just liked a lot. Jesus, what a fast dump. I've been reading comics since I was little. I've been reading books since I was little. How far back are we going? To childhood, early childhood?
Yeah, I would say
Lots of,
early childhood.
I'd say the thing I recall the most, like impulse, if you're like, think of it right now, think of your whole life right now. I watched a lot of G.I. Joe cartoons for sure. I remember that pretty fondly. Saturday cartoons and pro wrestling. Saturday was like the day where I could watch TV all day. So you'd watch cartoons until about noon, and then at noon you got Memphis wrestling here in Southern Indiana. So we'd watch that. And then there was Saturday Night Main Event. So lots of wrestling, lots of cartoons. I don't remember watching like real people TV, like human TV as a kid. I do remember my parents wouldn't let me watch Married with Children. I do recall things I recall quite clearly from my youth. See, I'm doing it now. I remember I remember when DuckTales debuted. I remember when Star Trek: The Next Generation debuted. Those I both got to watch. Those are obsessed with. And when the Tim Burton Batman movie came out, I want to say Fox did like a marathon of the Batman 66 shows. I watched all of those, and I taped them when I went to bed. We put the VCR on. Um, so I watched that a lot. We read a lot of comics. I say it all the time. I had the worst comics. Um, I don't know why we had a pull list because my parents don't read anything. I think so. My uncle Tony Starks, not Iron Man. Um, that he has always had like uh, a silver golden age like mail order thing. So I'm sure somehow him and that we read them, and so our parents were like they're reading them. But I had like the most basic B. I had Justice League, Spider Man, Hulk, and X Men, and it was such a bad period for like the big three because it was like Justice League Detroit. It was when Spider Man was doing nothing interesting. Like it's definitely when he beat Fire Lord in a fight, like in Manhattan, which is so dumb. And Hulk was like in the Crossroads dimension, which is like each issue was a standalone like horror sci. It was not for. It was no fun. No one talks warmly of the Crossroads Hulk dimension. So I'd say as a kid, that was like everything. Lots of comics. X Men obviously owned. I would talk if anyone give me 5 seconds. I was probably talking about Nightcrawler like all the time, and people are like, "What's wrong with this weird little kid?" Um, but I'd say from my youth, those are probably the big ones: Saturday morning cartoons, pro wrestling, and comic books.
Excellent. Very cool. Thank you.
I was curious.
I'm glad I
You seem
answered
to
that
blend.
correctly.
You definitely did. Um, I was wondering. You seem to blend comedy and horror very often in your books. I'm wondering how do you think those two work so well together?
Um, that's also probably semi accidental because like I hate this place was supposed to not be funny, but I think I just can't help myself. I certainly started as a cartoonist. I drew and wrote all my stuff, and I love action comedy stories, especially movies, and they're almost never good. Like it's a very small percentage of action comedies that are actually very good. And so you make the thing that you sort of want to exist, and I think I'm good at comedy. I think it's a small group. I say humbly, um, but horror is the same thing. I say this all the time. It's just the other side of that coin. They're both media that exist and are designed to make you feel a specific thing. I like that. I like a story that makes people have an emotional reaction, whether that's joy or whether it's fright. Um, but I also think the horror genre, it's true of everything, of all genres. I think action does it too, but there's something about horror that you can just throw everything in there. It's like it has a history of it's okay for this to be funny too. And I think also a little bit of comedy either takes the edge off of a very bad thing or it sort of distracts you before something very bad happens. So they just play off each other very nicely. I love both. I came into horror super late. I didn't like horror when I was a kid. I was very scared. I did not like it. So it wasn't until I was older that I mean, like literally, let's say like 7 years ago, and I fell in love with it. I just fell in love with it. I love low art forms that can so easily. When I say low art forms, that's a backhanded compliment, I guess. But like comics, wrestling, horror movies, even when they're really bad, which maybe they're most often bad, you're like, I enjoyed that. And when any of them are like amazing, it's like they overcame all these constructs and constraints that they sort of have in their genre. And it's like those highs are so high. Like I live for those. So like I really fell in love with horror because I was like, oh, it's just like these other things I like where it's always good, even when it's awful. Like I enjoy it, but when it's amazing, it's so amazing. It changed. You're like, oh, it's so good.
One of my favorite campy horror films is Jason Goes to New York. Have you ever seen that?
For
It's
sure.
so funny.
Yeah.
It's so funny because it's just him stowed away on a boat.
Yeah, and then like the
film.
whole movie is literally just him walking around and messing stuff up, like he's like a cartoon character in it. I love it. There's like I think, and I love slasher movies. I think like I listen. We all love like a very intellectual horror fright, but there's something about slasher movies. There's just I think it's because they're basically comic books still. It's a character in a costume who has a shtick. You know what I mean? Like they dressed up and they have some trick, and it's good versus evil, and it's so clear. But also the horror movies like devolved into sort of cartoon. All of them at some point in like the early '90s devolved into cartoon nonsense in a way they're like, listen, we're just having fun, right? And you're like, yeah, sure, let's just have fun. And I love that.
That's sick. I since you said you watched more not horror but more comedy and cartoons and everything, I'm wondering, was there any specific like stand up or any specific like shows that really influenced your like comedic perspective?
No way. I literally, and I think and this is why I have like sort of the policy I do for how I don't know how to do. In my opinion, like this is how you do comedy well. I consume everything. When I was a teenager, I worked at a used movie store. That was also a used bookstore. That was a comic shop. That was a baseball card that had pornography. And they let us take movies. They let us take, like, we could read and watch anything. So you watched everything. If you're a 17-year-old kid, you have nothing else to do besides watch 5 movies a night. You know what I mean? And I like comedies because they make me laugh, and life's hard and laughing's great. But I watch everything. And certainly at that time, I got introduced to a lot of classic stuff. Like that's where I learned about the Marx Brothers and fell in love with the Marx Brothers. Mel Brooks, et cetera, et cetera. I like all of it, man. There isn't one thing I could go, this is the one. And I think the secret to creating comedy well is that you give something to everybody. Like you want to get your fart jokes. You want to get like, you want to do a joke because it's so subjective and everyone likes different things. Like you want to do some sort of high stuff. You want to do some thinky stuff. You want to do something that just I think is funny and hope that someone else catches it and goes, that was really funny. I like dialogue bits, you know what I mean? So you kind of put everything in there, and I've consumed everything. And even if you were like, what did you hate? I'd be probably hard pressed, even though there's definitely bad things. I mean, bad things just really aren't funny. If you say you're a comedy and it's not funny, then it's bad. But for the most part, like there's something to take away from anything you watch as a storyteller to sort of not incorporate, is sort of like figure out what your version of it is, you know? I couldn't point one. I know that's a bad answer, but I consume so much, and I think a lot of, and like even comic stuff. I could be like, I don't know. I guess like Evan Dorkin. Like Evan Dorkin was probably a big influence because of how well he does comedy and the way that he does comedy, and certainly like Giffen and DeMatteis. I think JLI is the best. It's easier to sort of do it that way, where I can go, oh, I can see like my Peacemaker is JLI. Like I think that's the best direct market comedy of all time. And I'm surely overlooking some classic, but it's like I think it was so successful in what it did. It was still a superhero comic. It was still very funny. It's like, well, I didn't, but I can see the through lines for that, right? With movies and stuff, I just watched everything, man. And I could be like, oh, I really like Hitchcock. I really like the Marx Brothers, but I don't know if like you go, oh, I can clearly see that because it's me taking, it's like everything you want to take. Like I'm creating from a lifetime of just consuming non-stop, even to this day. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that answer makes sense. I feel like your comedy comes naturally and it's written very naturally. So yeah, makes sense. So do you think you have any sort of signature touch or thing that really defines you as a writer?
Um, yeah, I probably. I think you want the answer to be like, no, I'm so many things, right? But I do think there are certain things that. So I mean, I've since when I started making comics, I was old. I think I made my first comic when. How old are you? 13? I mean, like 14 years ago, basically, right? That's my daughter. That was like 14 years ago, and I would have been 33, 34. Um, and I did it because I was about to have my second kid, my second daughter, and I wouldn't have time anymore. Like the first kid was so much. And I was like, what do I need to get done now? Because I'll never have time again. And one of them was that I never finished a comic. It's not that I never made a comic. I was a high school kid who loved comic books, right? I drew hundreds of pages, but I never finished. And I don't know why that mattered at the time. Um, and I did it and I fell in love with it. But at the time I was like, I'm gonna make this the trick to make me finish this thing is to make the thing I wish existed, right? Um, and so everything I do, and I've been very lucky, and I hope to stay lucky, is that I've not had to do something just to do it. You know what I mean? I never had to take work just to take work. I've got to always make the thing that I wish existed in the world. And there's certain things that I think I just love in media that sort of always come around. So I like it when things are funny, but also when they make you cry. So I try to do that a lot. I want it to be funny and bombastic and high action and a spectacle, but I also want to feel something because that's what my favorite media is when you're like, this is so much fun. And then it does that thing where you go, holy, like this is a real thing. Like I can feel this. I deal with family a ton because I'm a middle-aged man with a family and it's the most important thing to me. And when at family, I deal with friendship. And I would say those themes repeat and you I kind of go, well, maybe I should take a maybe I should take a break from that. But I think that family and friendships I think those are universal things that everyone can relate to. And I don't think I could ever do like a space opera. Like I don't think I could do like it's always very interpersonal and it's always character driven. And I would say those are the things that are in sort of everything I do. I would love to have time to sit and try to figure out what a Kyle Stark space opera would be, but it's the scale's too big. Like the most important, the highest stakes things to me are between one person to another person, and that's not true, I think. But for me, like all I am is the people who are around me, and I think that's true of most people. So those are the Kyle Starks. Someone will be like, also they're stupid. I'm like, yeah, they're probably stupid too. I probably forgot something, but I think those are the big ones.
I feel like if you were to make a space opera, it'd be very much like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy type of vibes.
100%, 100%. Yeah, it would, and I like that's something like you could like a space romp. I don't know. There's something like whenever people do like big scale, like I would never like. Not that anyone would have came up with like Galactus, you know what I mean? But I was like, I would never, like, there'd never be the part where it's like, there's like a whole universe outside of just these guys fighting bad guys. I'd be like, that's too much for me. It's too much work. Far Sector, that's insane. Like, can you imagine? Jeez, I could never. And I love that. I love that. I love reading something like I'm really good friends with Matt Kent, and the stories he tells, I could never. And so I love Matt's stuff. It's very cerebral. It's very complicated. There's generally not like dick jokes in it. You know what I mean? And like they're so smart. It's like I love that. It's like I could never. I just don't have it in me.
So now this next question, usually people answer in one of two ways. One of which is it's always the same answer, and second of which is it is very, very unique to that person. So
Oh no.
the question is, how does your writing process usually begin?
How does it begin? Like, where does the idea come from? Or
Yeah, does it come to you in a dream? Is it something you
um,
sit down and actively think about?
Or does
so
like the company go, "Hey, this is what we need.
no,
Make a
I've
plot."
never had that. I've never had. I just did something where someone's like, they asked about Peacemaker, and they're like, so they told you, like, they gave you beats. It's like, no, why would I do that if they were like, if someone's like, so like for Marvel Unleashed, they were like, hey, we want to do the Pet Avengers, but we don't want them to be like a novelty anymore. We want them to be like sort of a serious group. That's not telling me what to do. That's like giving me a goal. And so I'm telling the story. I'm telling the story that I want to tell with these characters. That's still something the fans want for those characters. That is a story that I want to read that also achieves some sort of goal. And I think that is actually sort of fun. I would never, I did have a company reach out to me and like, we have an outline. We'd love for you to, and I'm like, there's no, absolutely not. Like that's like I'm not a house painter. Like I'm an architect. You know what I mean? That's probably a upsetting analogy to somebody, but I would say generally, like I said, I always sort of try to, they all come from different places, and that's a bad answer, but generally either it's something that I've thought about, a story that has sort of somehow been rattling around, which I've only been professionally making comics for 6 years, so that's not really a thing. But early on, I had a bunch of ideas at once, but those ideas were something like this. I want to make the best 80s action movie never made. It's Sex Castle. And then I go, I love the NBA and I love the movie Fright Night. How can I combine those things? It's old head. I have a book coming out next year called Karate Prom. And it was literally me going, I want to do a teen romance. You know what I mean? I just want to do a teen romance. It's like, well, why would I not put Kung Fu in it and Mercenaries for Hire and, you know, like blonde 80s bullies. And so I don't think there's a direct thing, because I can think of like, you know, I don't want to expose myself, but like Assassination, I watched the Koreans, by the way, have the best thrillers and action movies right now. They're so good. But I watched a movie based on like sort of the elevator pitch or the synopsis, which I thought was so dope. And then I watched it. I'm like, oh, that's not how I would have done it. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's that. Sometimes me and Schweitzer made Six Sidekicks. Like, and he might be like, I don't think that's true. But I'm like, well, I think it's probably a little true. But we saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and it's like, that was fun. What's our dumb version of that? And a lot of times is that I like X, and I want to figure out what my version of X is. And almost always, sometimes you see something and you go, oh man, I'd like to do something with a demon or something. You go, what is that? And then you figure it out. But usually it's, what would my version of whatever be? In many ways, usually you see something. I like Where Monsters Lie. I don't want to say like completely, but I was watching, I forgot, Fright Street. What's that show on Netflix? Oh, I'm blinking. There's 3 of them. Horror Street. Something Street. Sorry, everyone. Obviously, it was a huge influence. But there's a bit where I'm watching it, and I took I was like, oh, and it wasn't what happened, but I was like, it kind of implied like there's always a new slasher villain in this city. Every like 10 years, there's a new slasher villain. And for some reason, I was like, oh, do they all live there? Like, that's what, and I'm like, oh, do they all live there? Like, do they know each other? And then I thought, like, what if you were like Chucky, like you're Chucky, and it's like 3 years between movies? Like, what are you doing in between those 3 years? You know what I mean? Like, are you just hanging out who's paying for your cable, Chucky? And so that's where Monsters Lie come from. And it's almost always something like that, is I see something, or it's something like, eventually I want to do an X story, and I reach the point where I go, now it's time for me to do that story. I'm going to figure it out. Did that answer that question? Jesus Christ. I hope I answered it. All right.
I'm just curious, what
was that the same answer everyone gives? No? What's the normal answer? What do they say? What's the average answer?
I have a project that is brought to me, and I have to complete it.
Oh, that's weird. I don't think, like, I couldn't do that. I mean, I could do that, but I don't want to. And certainly, like, even with the Big Two stuff, because I'm sort of in my Big Two phase, since I don't know those characters anymore, like, I'd have to do a ton of research. Like, I don't think of an idea. I don't really dig into an idea until I know it's going to happen. Like a pitch, you do it. The thing with a pitch for me, and this would have been true for Where Monsters Lie, honestly. I know I'm taking over this conversation, but I can't help it. Is that if it's like, okay, I'm gonna do a pitch, and I do a pitch for Skybound. Here's the thing, I don't go, my pitch isn't, so what if a dog started smoking? You know what I mean? Like, that's not my pitch. my pitch is like, I have a story about a dog who's smoking, and this is the story. If they say no, and then I go, okay, well, I'll show it to Dark Horse, and they say no, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll show it to Oni, and they say no, I go, fuck it, I'll just make it myself. And that's a privilege I have. Like, I don't think of ideas unless I'm certain they will become real in some regards. And even if I'm very close to something, like, I don't go all the way until they go, it's time to go. I just have like basic beats. Like, this is the type of story I want to tell. These are the things that would sort of happen, but I'm not living it until I'm not living in that story. I'm not figuring out that story until they go. And even the pitches are too complicated because I'm already trying. Like, the pitch is the story I want to tell, and I don't think more about it until I'm doing it right. So I have that privilege that I can just make it myself, because I'm a bad artist also, along with only an okay writer. And a lot of people don't have that. But so the big two step, I'm like, offer me something. Like, I'm not, tell me who you want and I'll see if I can figure it out. And if I can figure it out, I'll say no. Like, I can say no. I don't have to do the Colossus miniseries. You know what I mean? But if I have a great story, then I want to do it. So again, that's privilege. There's a place of privilege for me that I've never had to do that, and I don't want to. I don't want to do that. But if the project is something like Marvel Unleashed, where they go, we should have a Peacemaker comic. You know what I mean? Like, a Peacemaker comic should exist. Can we get this done fairly quickly? Like, oh yeah, let's figure it out. Like, so yeah. But if someone was like, we want Spider-Man fighting Galactus, I'd be like, I don't care for that. That's okay.
With Karate Prom, I'm curious, what imprint is that going to be coming out on?
It's first second. It comes out in. It's first second. It comes out in the middle of next year, June, I think, maybe sooner. I don't know. Karate Prom.
That vac shop had awful timing, I swear.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was great.
But yeah, the creative process is obviously different for everyone. But I guess what I mean is usually it's like, oh, this came to me in a dream. This is just an idea that it came to me. Or it's like, you know, I was approached with X and now I have to complete Y. But
I don't know if I believe it came to me. I think that's like your subconscious compiling. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think if you're, that's me. What do I know? I'm not sure it gave you a dream. But I think it's like, if you're super hyper self-aware and critical of yourself like I am, it's always, when you find out where the sources of things are, like why you feel a certain way about this fashion choice, like why am I so weird about denim miniskirts? It's like, oh, Kelly Kapowski and Saved by the Bell. You know what I mean? Your life's a little it's worse and easier if everything has a source and you're like, I just need to find the source, it'll be fine.
So but I wanted to ask, how do you think your influence as a cartoonist really affects your writing process when you're not doing the art? When you're like plotting out scenes, do you draw like sketches or anything like that before you hand it over to whoever's doing the art for that comic?
Sure. So I do now. So there's two big differences. One, the artist will almost always be better at drawing than I am, so we love that. Two, if I'm not drawing it, I'm able to make more books. So those are priorities to me, because I have a lot of stories I want to tell before I die. So if someone's going to help me make them, that's huge. I'm not great at collaborating because I say that I think I'm fair, but I could be better. But I did all of it myself, so I'm very type A about story. The biggest difference is that I'll never give an artist as much work as I'll give myself. So I think I looked at Old Head and I counted. Old Head is my horror comedy about an ex-NBA player who finds out they live next door to a bunch of monsters and Dracula. Is that I looked and I think it averages like 7.5 panels per page. I think it averages that, which means there's some that are maybe there's one, and then there's some where there's maybe 10 or 12. I will almost never write more than 6 panels a page for an artist, just because it's a lot of work. And to ask for them to do the amount of labor that I would do, because that artist, when I draw my own stuff, that artist is free. Like, it's free. And that guy's willing to do whatever. And certainly good artists add panels and good artists merge panels. So it's like they know what they're doing, generally speaking. As long as the story is clear and the story and action's clear and the bits aren't ruined and the dialogue's not messed with, and they can kind of do what they want within reason. But I do thumbnails now, and the reason I didn't do it for a lot of Rick and Morty, and I did Rick and Morty for 5 years, because Mark Ellerby was so good. But I do it now because I felt like writing without seeing, because I can only write comics. Like I don't think I could write television. I don't think I could write. Maybe I could definitely not write a novel. It's because I see the panels and the sequencing, and that matters to me so much. The beats of a panel, and so I felt like I was losing some of the stuff that was very improvisational in my own work by not drawing it. Because when I do my own work, and kids, this is wrong. Don't do it. I don't write a script for my stuff. I never have. I'm never going to do it. I think about it a lot, like I do these other stories, and then I just do it. I know it's supposed to happen. I start drawing. It gives me space to add and subtract. And I felt like I was losing that in some of, and it's not true. They came out great because I worked with really good artists and because I wrote them the same. But so now I do thumbnails for everything. Those are for me. If the artist asks, they're there. But they're going to do, like, they're professional visual storytellers. So for the most part, those thumbnails are just for me as sort of a way to write. So I do I'm thumbnailing and then I go, oh, here's the dialogue, and I do little bubbles and like, this is a lot of dialogue. It has to be 2 panels, like that type of thing. And certain things, like I love beat panels, which is the Giffen, the Matthias McGuire sort of influence on me, where I love when someone says something and then there's a reaction panel, or when it's them like going to panel going, thinking, you know what I mean? And so there's certain things like that I realize, because they're repeat panels, and people who are professional comic artists don't like that because you're drawing the same thing over. And I don't know why they don't like it. They like to draw a different panel every time, but I think that they're great for beats and storytelling and pacing. And so that is something like I do kind of be like, hey, it's a repeat panel. Like, can we do this? Which is like my Wes Anderson, like everything's symmetrical storytelling. Like, this is my thing. Like, I do this thing. It's a lot of flashbacks and it's a lot of beat panels and it's a lot of repeat panels. But for the most part, I try to give them less work because they'll do a better job than me. And that has been almost universally true. I'd say that 99% of the comic artists I worked with did a better job than I could have possibly done.
But yeah, so I'm curious. Do you have any specific artists that you really enjoy, like reading the comics of, or checking out their art or anything?
But I mean, probably all like who you'd always say. You know what I mean? Like what Frank Quitely, and I think Guy Davis. I think Guy Davis is an all-time GOAT. It's a shame that he didn't do more comic work, but why would you if you make more money? My favorite cartoonist is probably Jason, who's a Swedish cartoonist who does these like weird anthropomorphic like cartoons. They're very weird, but they're very simple, and I love his work. I've been very lucky to get Dan Hip covers. I think Dan Hip, like I love Dan Hip's aesthetic. And I have since before like Teen Titans Go. So to get him to do a couple covers is great. I've worked with my favorite. I'm sure like when I was a kid, who was your favorite? Art Adams. Would love, like, that'd be great, right? Love Dorkin. Evan Dorkin's doing a cover for an upcoming book. Like, love it. That's great. There's certain aesthetics that I like, but for me the most important thing with comic art is that it clearly tells a story. So storytelling is hard. Almost anyone can draw a panel, but storytelling is very hard. And so I think Chris Schweitzer is a genius at it. Eric Henderson, I think, is one of the best. I got to work with both of them. Schweitzer twice. He's my best friend. We're having lunch in 20 minutes. I think his storytelling is great, and he is so additive. Eric Henderson, I think, is just a GOAT. This year, I've got to work with, I think, Steve Pugh is, and me on Peacemaker is perfect casting to do superhero like comedy, even not comedy. His stuff looks so good. He's such a good storyteller. But this year is like, in terms of comic artists, and it's not hyperbole, Peter Kowalski on Where Monsters Lie was perfect. Like, I couldn't have asked for anyone better than him. He just fit perfectly for, it's gross when it's supposed to be gross, and like he doesn't ham up silly stuff, and I love that. Fernando Pasaran, who's doing my Wild Dog story, is unbelievably good. Jesus I blanked on Churvis, who did Marvel Unleashed, is way too good to be drawing a bunch of like sad pet stories. He's so good. Like every like, what is this? Like, doesn't this guy have something better to do like than to draw this dog book? My book that's coming out, and this is a it's a sell, but I say sincerely, Pine and Merrimack from Boom comes out early January of next year, and it's Fran Galan, and dude, that guy's like, these guys are all great. I mean, you would go pros. Fran Galan is unbelievably good in this book. We did a Creep Show, Eisner nominated Creep Show, by the way, story together. And I just got his pages and I wrote some things. It was sort of it's kids on bikes versus vampires. And I wrote a page that I could see in my head. I could see the live action, you know what I mean? And I was like, they're not going to get this right. And you just accept that. Like, whomever the artist is, they're not going to be able to pull it off. He pulled it off. Like, unbelievably well. Better than I saw it. And there's a bit where I have these kids are talking in a room. These kids are talking in a room, and the first shot of these kids is above their bed. One kid's laying on the bed. He's throwing a baseball towards the reader, and the other kids are sitting on the floor. The next panel, it turns to a profile shot. The kid catches the ball. So you can see, like, I didn't write that. You know what I mean? Like, Fran just did that because he's so good at storytelling. And a lot of wonderful aesthetic people. Fernando Patron told the story exactly like the way I would have thumbnailed it. You know what I mean? It's perfect. It's beautiful. It's hyper realistic. He doesn't ham it up. Like, it's so good. And I'm not diminishing anyone. Fran does storytelling. I wrote 8 flashback panels. He turned into a montage. Like, those are storytelling choices. And so, like, I'm blown away by Fran. Every page I get in, he's kind of painting them. And again, all colors are good. All versions, all comics are good. All my comics are so. Peter's so good. CP is so good. But Fran is like, I feel like, and I'm not saying anyone's better than anyone else. I'm sincerely not saying that because they are all equally good in their own ways. But I feel like Fran is very likely to be the type of person who people are talking a lot about in the next couple of years. I think he's like one thing away from basically being stolen by, like Scott Snyder and Mark Millar or somebody. So just take him away from me, and I'll never see him. He's really good. I don't know how I got an artist. Oh, who I like? I like all those guys. I like all those guys.
That was a great response. That was exactly what I wanted to hear.
All right, cool.
So Peacemaker Tries Hard, lovely series. I especially love it because of its character inclusions, and I wanted to know what really drew you to the Red Bee character.
I love the Red Bee because there are characters in that book, like, say, the Demolition Team. I've never read the Demolition Team in a comic. I think that's not true because they were in a Green Lantern. I think I actually sought them out in a comic once. But a lot of stuff is like, my favorite comic when I was little was probably the Marvel Handbook. And so, like, I love DC's Who. I love just a list of superheroes and drawings of them, and here's their powers, and here's how tall they are. I don't know why. I love it. So a lot of stuff was like, if you read those books and you've never seen those characters, and for DC, because it's a lot of Charlton characters, Charlton. It's a bunch of characters who you don't know, who you never see, So a lot of it is just like, what's the Red Bee's deal? He has a bee friend he keeps in his belt buckle, and something about that had always sat with me. And like, if you love the TV show, there's clearly certain characters that are missing. Then you go, why isn't there? Why isn't? It's like, oh, but there are also clear replacements. So one of the things was like, I wanted a character to do a certain thing for the story. And what if this is my only DC story? So, like, I'm going to use Brain and Mala, because what if I only ever get to do one DC story? I love Brain and Mala. And then it's like, well, I want to put in all the ridiculous things. But the great thing about Black Label is, like, it's not necessarily the thing, because, like, Red Bee's so not represented. Like, if you go back to, which I did, if you go back and read, like, his first run stuff, he's not anything. He just has a bee named Michael, and he punches people a lot. Like, there's nothing there. It's not like he had a drug addiction so in a very James Gunn way, you're able to take these characters and sort of make them what you want them to be. And I feel like I like how DC World War II characters are still around, like, and they haven't aged. Like, little things like that I just think are really funny. And so for the Red Bee to be around, like, the idea of him being very positive, sort of positive fatherly influence on Peacemaker. I thought was really interesting, and I thought that sort of the way you could play between those characters was really interesting. Also, he has a single bee friend named Michael that I think is hilarious. I think it's just like someone was like, you know what would be cool? And like, what? I remember this guy. The superhero guy. It's like, yeah, what's he got? He got a bee. What? Say again? He's got one bee. What's he going to do with that bee? I don't know. It'll be cool though, right? What if he had 5 bees? Like, nah, that's 4 too many. One bee.
One singular bee.
Is it like a super bee? Nope. Just a regular bee. His name's Michael. That's the original Red bee name. I didn't make that up. That's his bee name.
I was really wondering about that.
The presumption is also that since it's been 100 years, I don't know which war it was. World War II, right? That's not right. Someone do math. A long time, and bees live like 3 weeks. He's had a bunch of Michaels. It just, what's your name? Michael. Whoever the chosen one is, he's like, you're the strongest bee. You will now be my bee friend, and you are Michael.
Makes them compete in a tournament.
I don't think they compete. I don't think Red Bee would make them compete. I think they would be like, decide amongst yourselves. Decide He would do it very democratically. There'd be no bee's feelings will get hurt. You know what I mean? He's very positive, and so it'd be like, hey guys, we need to come together as a community and decide who the new Michael is. And the bees are probably like use it as like they use it as like slang. It's like, man, you really Michaeled that honey, dude. It looks great. Oh, you're the Michael of honey making. You know, it's just like the best thing you could be is a Michael.
Red Bee,
right.
your book definitely.
He's D.
Your book was the reason why I got introduced to Red Bee now, and it was funny because recently he got included in the JSA book, and I was like, oh, I actually know that character.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know that.
His granddaughter, awesome. He died, and his granddaughter has the farm still, and Michael's still alive, which is very funny. And then, like, they make it like a major point, like, yeah, your grandfather's dead, but Michael's still here.
What? I gotta check this out.
Jeff Johns' current JSA run, yeah.
Jeff Johns is good at old stuff like that, I think. That's one of his strengths. I'm gonna check it out just because I do love Michael.
Yeah, but no, I love that. I love that answer. You should see my collection of the old Marvel Universe handbooks. I have all 12 volumes or whatever it is, like the original.
Yeah,
thing.
I love them.
Yeah, they're always. So
and then they put out the one that just had the weapons in it. Little kid, just like I'm like, oh my god! And like one of them is like, one of them is Nomad's throwing disc, and it's just like a circle with like 2 smaller circles on it. It's like, see, that's how they're made. You're like, that doesn't help me at all.
There's the weapons one, and then there's the dead people one.
The dead people. 2 volumes of the dead people ones, by the way.
Yep.
Even better. They're all
show how they die
on the cover.
Exactly. There's a thumbnail of how they die.
Yes.
And there's a thing where it's this one guy in like a muscle tee or something gunning down most of the characters. I don't know if you remember.
You're thinking of the Scourge. It's the Scourge. The Scourge. He killed so many people. But in the original Marvel handbook, it'd have like your drawing, and then there'd be a thumbnail of like them doing their power or whatever. Like not always, but often. And so for the dead ones, the panels them dying. It's so great. It's so funny. And you know what's interesting, or maybe not interesting, but interesting to me is that most of those were Mark Gruenwald, who was a famous Marvel editor, but also like maybe my favorite Marvel writer, like maybe one of my favorite writers. So to find out, like, because I was like, oh, sort of find out like, oh, I love Squadron Supreme and I love DP7 and I love this Captain America run, like the specific guy, like, oh, it's all the same guy. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. To find out, it's like, oh yeah, he's the guy who did Marvel Hand. He's the guy who did that. I'm like, what? One guy did everything I like, Mark Gruenwald.
Well, now I know that. That's really funny.
Love Mark Gruenwald. One of my favorites for pure superhero storytelling, like just pure superhero fun. Mark Gruenwald. You can't go wrong. You cannot go wrong. Dialogue. I think that Mark Gruenwald was like a really good, was a really great dialogue writer, or even like a passably good dialogue writer. People would talk about him as one of like the greats, like one of the great superhero storytellers. Because clearly he just wanted to tell superhero stories, and they're so pure. Like he's like it's Busiek-esque, but Busiek can write dialogue. So like we love Busiek. No one talks about Grunwald, but I love Grunwald. He's one of my favorites.
I wanted to ask, with characters like Joseph and I Hate This Place, I was wondering, how do you write characters that readers like love to hate? Because I fucking hated that character so much.
Yeah. I don't know the answers to that, except that I think bad guys should be bad. And certainly for I Hate This Place, which is, there's monsters in the woods and there's murder ghosts and all sorts of bad things happening. For me, I sort of wanted to lean into that Stephen King, like human beings are always the worst. Like the realist worst monster is just a normal human being. So for Rinda and Joseph, they're worse than everyone else. But I don't know the answer to that, except for you want your bad guys to be bad and as sort of spectacularly bad. That's not true. I feel like Brain and Mala weren't like they're sort of fun. They seem like they might be fun to hang out with if they weren't trying to take over the world. So not always like super bad, but I do think I think sort of a lot of storytelling has stepped away from being like they're bad. They don't just do bad things, like you don't like them. And we sort of do like, well, they're doing terrible things, so they're bad. It's like, yeah, but they should also, if they're bad, then you know what I mean? Like they're all like Joseph has terrible opinions on everything. I have a character who's going to be in the second Wild Dog story, who is kind of me leaning into that is like, he's not just bad, like he's awful too. You know what I mean? Like, that I'm excited, scared to see people's response to. So, I think it comes out next week. Wild Dog, Brave and the Bold #8. So I made a whole new villain, throwaway villain character, it's like he's awful. But I think like we how do I word this without feeling like I'm falling into current time? But like you go like horror, you write horror and you go, these are the things I'm scared of, right? That's how you do it. He's like, if I'm scared of it, maybe they're scared of it. And I think the same way with villains is you go, because it's so easy just to write someone who's generically bad. Like they do bad things. They're a fascist dictator. It's like, well, yeah, okay. Like, and they're like, oh, just go ahead and, bomb that neighborhood. You're like, sure. There's a numbness to it. But I think like when they are bad, when they have bad opinions and they say awful things, and especially when they're selfish in the way Joseph, and I'll tell you the thing is, I think Joseph probably is the most fully formed in his motivations. Like he clearly believes everything's thought out for him. He's not acting impulsively. It's not like all of this is intentional, and he's smart, which makes it worse because when people have bad opinions and they're smart, it's so confusing to anyone because like, you're a smart guy. Why would you think this? And I think also with Joseph, there's some degree to maybe he doesn't believe, but he's so self-serving and he's found this is the way to get what he wants also, that even the sort of stuff he's pushing may not be something he entirely even cares about, which I think sort of happened. You can sort of see at the end when he's very easily convinced that the argument he's been making this whole time isn't right. He's like, that's fine as long as I get what I want, basically, I'd like to hear that because I do think I think he's maybe my best villain, because he's not comical. He's just not comical at all compared to my other ones.
No, he was very much not funny in any way. Like every time he the minute he came into the story, I felt like the Force just took an immediate backseat because he was just so much more of a threat than like any of the supernatural creatures.
Yeah, and so when I said earlier, like you write the thing that frightens you. To me, it's none of it. Like my biggest fear is two things. One, sort of putting my family in danger. You know what I mean? And not knowing what to do about it, which is each Gabby and Trudy's sort of fear, because Trudy, she has planned for everything, and so to be put on this, to put in this place where there's no planning, like there is no. Well, I read up on ghosts. I read up on the water shortage. I read up on government failures. I read up on the post-apocalyptic. I know what to do. I know how to hunt and feed myself during the post-apocalyptic wasteland. But there is no, oh yeah, and I know what to do about zombies. And so for her, there was that. But at the same, like this is the same. Like by the time Joseph shows up, they've kind of figured out the woods, right? Like they know, like after a certain time, you should be inside the house. You know, you probably shouldn't go to certain places unless you're really, really prepared for it. There's a giant slicer monster. There's not a lot to be done about that. You kind of hope you don't run into it. Like sometimes that's the plan. The horned guy, don't know. Just stay away from him. But like Joseph, like, what do you do? Like he's a force of nature. And he wants awful things and has people who are going to do their awful things for him. That's a lot, man. Shout out to scary books. I love talking about my scary books. This is great.
So pivoting to another scary book then, with Where Monsters Lie, was there a certain list of essential horror icons you wanted to represent, and was there anyone you weren't allowed to use?
No one said. Well, so here's the thing. I love tropes. This is because that's a tough answer, because when I was planning, like I referenced earlier, sort of like, what if all these people live together? That's not the story. There has to be a story at some point, but I love tropes because they're shorthand. So like if you have, in that book, Daniel Dawson's if you're a big horror aficionado, you know, we call them a shape, you know what that means, but the shape is, there's a million shapes. You know what I mean? There's Michael Myers, there's Jason, there's the machete guy. There's a million of them. They go on and on. Arguably, Leatherface is a shape. So you get big, strong guy won't die. So my thing was tropes and more than characters. And I actually I went through 3 publishers. It was at the point Where Monsters Lie was a book for sure I was just going to draw. And then Dark Horse took it up, and they thought I was going to draw it. I was like, I don't want to draw it if I don't have to. And so Peter came in, which is great. But I didn't have a list. It's more about what trope I thought was interesting. So like, to me, there's a character that is a ventriloquist doll with a girl. It's not Chucky, but it's Chucky. But you know what? There's a million ventriloquist dolls. Like, it's not like there's a history of dolls. So it's less I want people to go, oh, it's Chucky. I don't want you to do that. I want you to go, oh, I'm familiar with the haunted doll. You know what I mean? I'm familiar with the guy who makes traps, because there's not one of those. There's a bunch of them, and it's not supposed to be one of them. He's obviously like that guy's a doofus. Like, that guy's a doofus moron who just likes to build traps, and he doesn't even build the traps. Like, someone else builds the traps for him because he's not smart enough to build the traps. So it's more like this interesting of, like I said, I got the nugget of, I like the idea of in between movies, Jason's not just standing in the woods for 3 years. He goes someplace else and they sort of take care of him. Whenever at the end of Scream, they turn around and the body's gone, someone was helping them with that. Like, they get a little assistance out there. And so going through that was interesting. And then it's a matter of like, what pieces do I need to tell this story? And not who can I shove in here? There could be more of Where Monsters Lie. Like, it ends in a way where we want more. There's more tropes I want to play with, but I'm also doing, like, there's a character called Blank Master. He's not based on any. I just thought it was funny. You know what I mean? Like, some of it's like, I just think it's funny, and it feels like it could have been something. But the great thing about, and here's the thing, that first publisher, I think they thought, like, they're like, oh, well, we'd get in trouble for doing this because he's clearly. And then the second publisher, I think, or one of them didn't get it. One of them just didn't get it clearly. And the other one, I think, probably thought, they're like, we couldn't make a TV show out of this. But the thing is, you super easily could. But yeah, I didn't have a list. But as I was doing, so here's my story, which is, what if a final girl who is basically Batman finds them? Like, that's the story. Like, what happens then, right? And so the next one is like, well, there has to be. It's to me, it is 4 issues that sold out. By the way, it sold out at distributor level. So get the trade. I highly recommend it. Because it's sold out. A lot of people didn't read it. And I think it's one of the best things I've done. I think it's a romp. I think it's so much fun. I think it's funny. I think it's scary. I think it's a perfect little 4-issue horror movie. To me, it's like 2 hours, right? More or less. It's like a 2-hour experience. And so we're like, do more. It's like, we're doing a bad sequel. It has to be a bad sequel. So it's like the same thing. It's like, well, who did I not use that I would like to use? So there was more in the theoretical future. Nothing's been announced. I have to be very careful. In a theoretical future, it was like, what is a character that I didn't use that I think would be fun? And there's obviously, though not in this one, there's a bunch of cool Japanese, like, I don't know what the Japanese Wilmhurst looks like, but I hope I get to find out someday, because that's insane. But there's some big sort of tropes that are left out, I think. I don't want to say too much, but you think like, well, here's these characters, like these are vaguely these characters, like this guy is not in there, and this type of character is in there. And so some of it is like I need to do, I like that's definitely come into play, but also it's again like what's the story? You know what I mean? Like what's this arc? Where are these characters going? And is more important. That's my answer. It wasn't a list. There wasn't a list. I just who do you need for this book to work? And what would be the most entertaining? I love that. I love that book. The fact that Where Monsters Lie isn't on a bunch. I say this again humbly, like that. It's not on any in year-end list is because no one read it. I think it's sad because I think it's really good. I think it's really fun, and I think if people like horror at all, even if you don't, I think it's a lot of fun. But if you like horror at all, it's such like a party. Like it's such a horror party, and that wasn't intentional. I just telling the story I wanted to tell. You know what I mean? But like I wrote that book, it was seamless. Like, and usually there's like fights, internal fights where you're like trying to figure out logistics and everything about that. I just had so much fun writing it, and I think it comes very clearly across in the work.
Yeah, I know I enjoyed it.
Yeah, same. I definitely would love to see your take on like the ring girl trope, like
There's
girl
so
from
many
the well coming out of the TV.
Yeah, what is that? And I'm gonna have to figure like I gotta figure out what it is. The Audition Girl. Ugh. You guys don't know that one? Ugh, that's a tough one. They have so many good. It's just like they have different ghosts. You know what I mean? Like there's so much. Anyway, let's hope for Where Monsters Lie Volume 3.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
Tokyo Calling, or whatever it's called.
So I wanted to ask. Now this is an interesting question. I think you might not have an answer off the top of your head, but where did the D-Dog mask come from? Like, was it D-Man having like a D-Man no more type of situation? Did he lose it at the laundromat? Like, what happened to it?
I can't recall. It might have been edited out, but I think she says like she found the mask. Like she just found it in a junkyard.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how it got to the junkyard.
So how did it get there? I mean, it's pretty torn up. So you figure he's like, I gotta get a new mask. He probably just tossed it, and she found it. That's my take. And the thing is, I'll tell you the thing that's interesting about D-Man. D-Man made his own costume. I don't know if you knew this. D-Man made his own costume, and not only did he design and make his own costume, he also, and this is canon, he made the U.S. agent costume. So he would just make himself a new mask. So he would just be like, this one's all torn up. I was in a fight with D-level, with the Armadillo. The Armadillo got a good hook on me. The mask was ruined. I threw it away. And D-Dog, of course, saw an opportunity to finally mask up and be the greatest hero that ever lived. And so she took it, and she doesn't care that it's a little torn up. Because, you know, we're all a little torn up is probably what D-Dog would say. But we're doing our best, just like this mask.
Now, last few questions here, wrapping up. But an important question. Why must you tear at my heartstrings by killing lovable characters?
I think it just because I just want to. Because I just want to. I just think it's important to feel stuff, and I don't think I think there's a stuff in like I Hate This Place where, you know, well, I did kill a lovable character and I hate this place. But I think it's not always people dying that makes people feel things. And I think I like it. I like big hero moments. I just think it's important to feel things in stories because, and that's not like I'm doing comedies and I'm doing horrors, and obviously I say I'm not only doing comedies, I'm doing stories that have amusing elements to them. You know what I mean? I don't want to box things in like that because I think there are a lot of different things, and even like, I'm blanking on what I've done because I'm working on stuff that's not out yet. There's stuff that has horror elements that's not a horror. You know what I mean? I think it's important to feel a bunch of different things because, like I said when we started, like that's what I want. Comedies, they'll make you laugh, sure, and the good ones will make you do other stuff, and horrors make you scared, and the good ones make you do other stuff. And I think the best media has a bunch of everything in it, and certainly I like to laugh. I think with what my intention is that obviously I want to entertain people. That's why we do this. That's the sole purpose, is to entertain people. But the world sucks, man, right? And to give people like 20 minutes, like a 20-minute reprieve and just be entertained is a lot. But for me, I like a little bit of everything. And I like it when it hurts too. And I like it when it's a long laugh. I think if you look at almost everything I do starts off very, very, if it's humor leaning, starts off very, very funny. By the end, it's not. You know what I mean? And that's because it's not, it's like, welcome, here's these people. Aren't we having fun? And then, but here's the story. And stories make you feel, a good story makes you feel things. And that's not always true for everything. Sometimes I just wanted to make a fun little romp of a book, which is what Where Monsters Lie is. It's just a fun little romp of a book. And I think that's important. But for me, the stories I like are the ones where, oh, and here's the gut punch. And I like that. I can't answer it. I like it. That's the kind of stories I consume. And I think, like I said, the best things have a lot of everything in it. So if you were just laughing the whole time, then there's no highs, there's no highs, and there's no lows. Right. But it's like I like those moments, and I don't think they necessarily need to be death. Those certainly, the benefit of telling my own stories is I get to kill these characters. You know, when we did Assassination, which is my Skybound book with Eric Henderson, is supposed to be about a bunch of assassins sort of trying to be friends, to work together, and kind of about one guy trying to get revenge for the death of his husband. But in many ways, it became the fucking Dave story about these two disparate, different people becoming friends, like really great friends. And we talked to them like, we should kill them, right? At the end, like they should die, right? And we had, like, me and Erica had a conversation about it. Like, they should die. And it's like, because we can do whatever we want. This is it. It's not going to keep going. And this whole book is about people dying. It's just assassins killing other people, like, nonstop. And it's not like killing people. You don't just do it for the sake of, but like, I don't want to spoil one of my books, but like, I have a dog in every book, but only one dog's ever died. Only one dog's ever died.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not going to say,
dog.
I'm not going to say I set that up. I'm not going to say like there was an intentionality, because listen, I'm such a dog guy. I'm full dog. My daughter's sitting on the couch right now with my two dogs on top of her. My oldest dog died. We had to put her down 2 weeks after the last issue of Marvel Unleashed came out. The irony is not lost on me. But it's just like what happens in Peacemaker. It has to happen for that character's arc. Like it's not like I did it, but I'm gonna tell you, when I'm writing Peacemaker and I'm like, this book's so funny and CPU's doing such a good job. I'm like, and I told the editors, I'm like, if I do this right, people will cry twice. And I don't want to spoil it. They're gonna cry when the bee dies, and they're gonna cry when Red Bee dies. And the thing is, like, I love that. Not because I did. That's what I want. That's what I want in the story. When Michael, a bee, makes the greatest sacrifice a bee can make, I'm here for that in story. You know what I mean? Like that's it's not even about him dying. It's that he made the sacrifice that I love. I have a bit in issue 2 of Pine and Merrimack out next month from Boom Studios. In issue 2, because it's very much about Pine. Again, I'm tangenting, but Pine and Merrimack is about an ex-homicide detective and her professional MMA fighter husband, who go to this cozy little town because she hates murder, just to open like a tiny little detective agency. And he adores her. Like he lives for her and she lives for him. But he's like someone in one way, like he's such a wife guy. And I'm like, he's such a wife guy. And there's a bit in issue 2 where there's sort of an overwhelming fight about to happen. And he says, get behind me. He says, get behind me. And that's so simple and it's nothing. And I bet Fran nails it. But that moment to me, I'm like, those are the moments I want. The moment where it's not just he's going to do what he's done because we know he can fight, but he's like, get behind me. Like, you know what I mean? And because I love moments like that, I write moments like that because I want to feel the way that the stories that I love and the moments I love, you bring them back around. I don't know if I can kill any beloved characters for a while. There's certain things, I don't know if I can have dogs in stories for a while. And I don't know if I can, because I have so many. Bruce Wayne, Baphomet, D-Dog, Pizza Dog, Donny Cates' dog. Bats. Like, there's a lot of dogs in my books. And even the next book, I was like, I gotta take a break. Even the next book that I had come out is Wild Dog. There's no dogs in that. So I was like, I had to take a break from dogs, and I probably won't kill.
So next book is Animal Man, right?
Dude, I would love. I would love to do Animal Man for a lot of different reasons. But I like that character, and whenever he's so like I love this is my sort of I'm accidentally going to manifest this, but like one of my favorite characters is Hank Pym. I love Hank Pym because he's so fractured and so human and so aware, and he just fails over and over and over. And you know, he was going to kill himself at one point in time, and then Firebird said, "Don't kill yourself. You're Hank Pym. You're great." Because he's like, all I do is make things worse, which is true. And so he became jumpsuit Hank Pym, science adventure Hank Pym, where he just had pockets full of tiny things, which I love. Like he just has a bunch of Lego pockets. But I couldn't write a Hank Pym comic because he does smart guy stuff. You know what I mean? Like he does smart guy stuff. I could never be like, and here's the science of shrinking, and then here's the cool things that happen when you're so small. I'm too dumb for it. Like I just couldn't do it. But like Animal Man, my oldest daughter's a zoo teen. She can help me out. You know what I mean? Like I can figure out cool animal stuff. Like it doesn't feel like it's beyond me. Like you know, writing Hank Pym or Reed Richards and like I love family stuff. Like I'd love to write. In theory, I think I'd write a good Fantastic Four. I couldn't do any of the smart guy stuff, and it's just not. It's like Challenger of the Unknown. They do smart guy stuff. There's some guys like you just go, I'm too dumb for that. Give me Nomad with a shotgun and a baby on his back. Let me ride.
Fair. And final question. We wanted to ask, what are your upcoming projects? What do you have in the works? Do you have anything you want to talk about or shout out? We'd be very interested to know.
Yeah, to shout out more about. Obviously, Pine and Merrimack starting early next year. That's from Boom. It's 5 issues with Fran Galland, who I say sincerely, it's worth it just for his art. It's so unbelievably good. It is a cozy. It's very much, and it's also in many ways a spiritual follow-up to I Hate This Place. I want to write more people who love each other. I think that type of coupling is engaging and fun, and then to do terrible things to those people. Oh, I do kill people. Guys, I lied. I'm going to try to, down the road, I'm going to quit killing people.
You promised one day to stop your murder spree.
Well, shit. So anyway, it's like sort of a cozy detective story, which escalates each issue. It gets worse and worse and worse. Which they take a kidnapping case that she shouldn't have taken. It gets worse and worse and worse. But it's that these are very charming people who love each other, who are in immense danger, and the danger is it keeps getting worse, which I think is a fun. I can't announce other things. There's a lot of stuff I'm doing. I'm literally the busiest I've ever been. I'm writing 5 books. I'm technically writing 7 books, but I kind of finished 2 of them. So it's the busiest I've ever been. Nothing's been announced. There's going to be, I think, a big DC announcement next year, which will, again, I think feel like perfect casting for me as a writer. When they offered me, I was like, yes, I can 1,000% do that. I sort of alluded to another Dark Horse sequel that could be existing. That has been announced, Pine and Merrimack, which I'm very excited about. Again, Fran Galland. It's worth it. Check it. The first issue is such a banger. Read the first issue. I think if you read the first issue, you'll be in. Karate Prom's been announced, which is like a 200, it's not 200, I don't know how long it is, 180 page OGN from For a Second. It is all ages, but it's Kyle Stark's book. It just means there's no curse words in it, really. There's no curse words and no one's getting like eviscerated. But I think it has all the things people would like. It's charming characters. It's people falling in love. It's a lot of fight scenes. I drew it. It feels like sort of Sex Castle Kill Them All era to me, where it's just like it's a lot of fun and silly characters. They are doing a collected edition of Rock Candy Mountain next year. I'm very excited about that. I love that book. I think the people who read Peacemaker, who were reading other things from me, are reading that book more than anything else. So it's been selling. So they decided to do a collected volume, which I'm stoked about because it should have always been 1 volume. The fact that I let it come out in 2 volumes was, I just didn't know any better. I was just young, and it's one story. And Sex Castle is a book that has sold pretty evenly since it came out because people will buy it and then give it away and then buy another one because it's one story and it's quick. And I think Rock Candy Mountain would have done the same thing. But they did 2 volumes, and it was the era of $10 volume 1s. I didn't know how to end an issue, frankly. So it just stops. Like there's no cliffhanger. There's no reason to go, let me read the second half. And the second half of a story is the best part of any story. So whammy on Kyle. So I'm excited about that. I have, let me see if I do the math. I think I just did it great. Pine and Merrimack Share. That book, that other book, that other book, that other book. I have 6 books, and I think I'm doing a pitch for a big secret thing that we've been talking about all year. We're doing a pitch, so I don't know if that will start next year or the year after, but that will be announced next year, I'm sure. I'm the busiest I've ever been, man, and it's not great in many ways. It was a mistake. Whenever you see your favorite Marvel writer or whomever, they're writing 5 books. They're writing 5 books at once, and it's awful. It's not the way to do it. There's got to be a better way. So I'm hoping to say no, but here's the thing: if I can do a good story, I'll never say no. I just can't turn it down, and that's the blue collar guy in me. So 3 things have been announced. I think I'm going to have at least 5 books out next year, at least. I'd kind of like to write and draw something again, like soon. Like I like to do it if I don't do it every 2 years, I get mad. And I haven't done anything since Karate Prom, which was the pandemic. That's not true. I did Louise Sprouse, which you can get for free on my website, but that was 2021. And so it's 3 years since I've drawn a comic. I don't like that. I like to draw them because I get to do whatever I want, and I love that. There's no editors. The audience is, I don't know what the audience is. I just get to do whatever dumb thing I want to do and hope people like it. So yeah, that's what I got coming out. In theory.
Excellent. Well, I know I'm excited. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of stuff, and we're excited to read it all. So, yeah, we want to thank Kyle Starks so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate your time, Kyle. It means a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. You guys have a good one. I'm gonna go to lunch with Chris Schweitzer now.
Yeah, enjoy your lunch.
Thanks, guys.
Remember to like, subscribe, comment down below, and we'll see you guys next time.